know that sound is the Unfiltered Band. It means, yes, another episode of Unfiltered coming your way. It's officially go down as episode 122, calling it straight sugar. As Edwin Diaz reportedly signs back with the New York Mets, Andy Martino, Bob Nightingale, others have this out again reported, pending physical. 5 years, $102 million as we sit here live, 5 o'clock Eastern time on a Sunday. Of course, welcome to all of you who are joining us on Apple, Spotify, everywhere you get your podcasts, where you can get there, as well as at Casey Stern on Twitter, inside the Unfiltered Revolution, and jump on the YouTube channel for my side of it, which you can get in my bio on Twitter, or at Believe's channel, BLEAV, and get all the episodes, all the interviews, the conversations, the laughs, the breakdowns, and more. And thank you, Unfiltered Band. Just want to hop on board. Won't be long here. You can chat along the way live if you want. Otherwise, get to me at Casey Stern and replies if you listen to this Apple, Spotify, wherever you get them. It's funny, I did the wrap-up episode of the World Series live earlier today, about 5 hours ago as we sit here on the live side. And I said, it's amazing, having covered this sport now 2 decades, just how quickly we snap a finger and turn in the postseason, right? Team is on a high like the Dodgers. They can't lose. An amazing season. Boom. They're gone. The Phillies, we don't trust them at all. Boom. They're on a run. The momentum's crazy. They have a World Series record-breaking homer game and a barrage against Lance McCullers. Boom, they get no hit. And 2 days later, you're going home. And now all of a sudden, it's the same way as you get into the offseason, just how quickly things work. So I wanted to hop on quickly and break down at least the first huge, and it is big, reported deal from Clearly. If you're looking at the top free agents who are out there in the marketplace, and there are a lot of numbers of names, and depending upon who officially opts out and who doesn't, when you look at the DeGroms and the Bogarts and Aaron Judge at the forefront, among others, Edwin Diaz right in that top mix, and now going to stay at the back end for the New York Mets. We always tell you at the front end of our show, we're presented by our good friends at BetOnline. Basketball is back. BetOnline remains your number one source for your sports betting needs this season. Latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends only over at BetOnline is your continued source for all your sports wagering information. BetOnline's got live betting, free contests, and giveaways all season long. Fastest and easiest way to bet your favorite sports teams and events, whether it's NFL, NBA, NHL, MMA, tennis, boxing, or even golf. Simple, head over to betonline.ag to join. That's betonline.ag and get your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use the promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, to receive your rewards. It's BetOnline, where the game starts. Again, this will be short and sweet, but let's get started. First big name off the board, one of the top names who was on it, or would he be, and Edwin Diaz. Edwin Diaz, a guy who, when he came over in the trade from Seattle, was a guy who was looked at it, could be maybe the steal, or at least make it worthwhile when the Cano thing looked to implode and be a total disaster, which it was. Yet Edwin Diaz was that. Couldn't find the fastball, then couldn't make the slider work, had no confidence, and looked like a guy who, hey, great to see what you did in Seattle, but you're never going to cut it in New York. But then something happened, and he found the confidence. And clearly this season, look, outside of in Cleveland with the Guardians at the back end, there's nobody else even in the conversation that Edwin Diaz, a conversation about 1.5 or 2 the whole season in terms of the kind of closer this guy was. As dominant as you'll ever see in a regular campaign, brilliant, pitching more than an inning, any inning at the end, Buck using him in different spots, having no issues with it. And the trumpets they were sounding, and it wasn't just about all the theatrics for Edwin Diaz and the sugar coming out of that bullpen, but it was the heat that he was dialing up and the strikeout totals and the record-breaking strikeout totals per 9 that he was putting up as a closer all season long. I said this in the show I did 5 hours ago when I looked at all the free agents. I said with the Mets specifically, just to touch on it before we get started, I thought I'd have more than 5 hours to dig into it. I said there's only one must. I said Brandon Nimmo's a really want to. Jacob deGrom's a really want to. Those answers can come with the money that Steve Cohen has. They can come with what's in your system through trade. There's no answer that's coming if it's not Edwin Diaz for what he does for this team. Now, I understand the amount of innings that they pitch, and I get all the things we say, and I will still tell you, as I'm sure anybody who watched the Mets all year would tell you, that Edwin Diaz was as important as any player on that team the entire year. He was as important as Frankie Lindor was the whole year. He was as important as Pete Alonso. Well, how could he be? Because just knowing that they had him in spots to lock down games, what it did to relieve and to really give relief to that team in other areas and in games that he didn't pitch, the amount of times he came in and was locked down and made it open shut, it put them in such a sweet position and allowed Buck really to manage a game where, remember, he had months at a time without Max Scherzer, months at a time without Jacob deGrom. An offense that went in and out. But the one constant the whole year, because look, Pete had some ups and downs, Frankie had some ups and downs, even Marte, certainly with injuries, right? Although he was very consistent. The one thing all year that was the given, from bell to bell, not sort of bell to bell when he's healthy, Max Scherzer, not sort of bell to bell when he's healthy, whenever that was, Jacob deGrom. But I mean bell to bell, like when you clock in to when you clock out, that's that dude, that guy in Edwin Diaz. It's why the memorabilia guy, 89, jumps in. Amazing signing, bro. You are damn straight. This absolutely had to happen. Now, let's talk about the money the Mets have. They got tons, and they're lucky that they have tons. Look, anybody who's a Met fan is rooting for this team at, I don't even know, ad nauseum how many times where it was instead of the Wilpons, to quote the great Steve Summers, the schmooze, it was the coupons, all right? I used to joke, and nothing against Milwaukee, but I used to say we're not playing in Milwaukee, but it's the Milwaukee Mets, because they never acted like the New York Mets. They didn't do these things. They didn't do these things. The old Yankees with George, and he'd do some crazy stuff too, but he would do these things. You're a New York team, you act like you're a New York team. What does that mean? If you got the money, spend the damn money. I've always said this, look, my whole family, Yankee fans except me, I never asked anybody to apologize if you're a Yankee fan for your team spending money. I hate that. When people are like, you bought a championship, good. Who gives a shit? Really? Do you care? I want to root for a team where the owner goes out and spends money. I want to root for a team where the owner's got cash. I don't want to root. You don't feel any better if you're a Pirate fan. It doesn't feel better if you're a Guardian fan. You're like, look at everything we did with what little we have. You know what you're thinking? Geez, can you imagine if we actually had a little what we could have done? We could have beaten the Yankees. We could have maybe beaten the Astros. We could be, look what we did. But we didn't do enough because you couldn't spend. We didn't have the cash. When you got the cash, you got to spend that cash. And Matt in Florida, much love. Of course I remember. Matt in Florida, I didn't realize, the memorabilia guy, 89, was a caller of mine. I want to go back to, we're talking about, geez, I did Under the Lights and I did The Bottom Line, 2 shows for MLB.com. We're talking about 2005, 2006 area, going back 16, 17 years ago. So much love. Appreciate that. Thank you. Robert says, I think Cohen is going to take the Mets to the series. Probably the best thing to happen to the Mets in a long time. No, he definitely the best thing, Robert, to happen to the Mets in a long time. But you got to lock up Edwin Diaz. It's not about, is he worth $100 million? No closer, no reliever, none of them do you want to pay $100 million. None. None of them do you want to give a 5-year deal with how quickly they disappear off the face of the earth, seemingly. We thought Edwin Diaz was doing that 2 years ago before he jumped back in the mix, right? At the highest level. None of them do you want to pay $20 million a year, especially when you got the Nimmo question, the deGrom question. How do you fix it? How are you going to figure it out? Do you go after Ohtani a year from now? Are you trying to bring in guys and make trades for, front-end dudes that eventually you're going to have to pay? How are you going to use the money? All of that, right? You got your own guys. How are we going to extend them? You got all these different questions that you want to have answered, and there's only so much money you could spend. That's why the Braves down here in Atlanta are thinking, geez, did we not save enough for Dansby Swanson? But if you're the Mets, it's not about want. There's no choice with Edwin Diaz. I want Brandon Nimmo back in a Mets uniform, but that is a want to. I want Jacob deGrom back in a Met uniform. That will come down in a lot of ways to if he wants to be. But I want to, and that's a want to. Edwin Diaz was a have to. Edwin Diaz was a have to. The way he played this year, that's a have to. The way he pitched for you, what he meant to you, that's a have to. The answers that he gives you by being back in there next year and for the next 5, that is a have to. You are trying to win now. Max Scherzer is old. We saw it down the stretch of the season. You don't even know are you going to keep him in bubble wrap or healthy enough, all right? You got age in some areas on this team. You got big contracts, but not for, you're not sitting there with a lot of young kids. Now, look, I understand, right? Alvarez, and we'll see what we get out of him. And you know what? You tell me you love Vientos, you love Beatty, whoever the kids are, Mauricio, right? All these, that's great. But at the end of the day, you got some age on some of your dudes that you're paying, and especially in the front end. And by the way, if deGrom doesn't sign, one of the first guys, if you're not already figuring this out, the Mets are going to go after is named Justin Verlander, who's also kind of old. They're going to go after it. I said this a couple of weeks ago. If DeGrom's not on the Mets, I think Verlander will be if he's not in Houston. And Max will reel him back in to go and, hey, wouldn't it be cool, down the stretch of our careers to end it together where we stay, yada, yada, yada. And I think that's the story they'll try and tell because the Mets got to go win now. They got to win now, like tomorrow. You don't come in with Steve Cohen spending that kind of money and you're trying to you want to be consistently good for a while. You want to make the playoffs every year. They did that. But you got to get that taste out of your mouth after what happened this year, and you got to go win. If DeGrom doesn't stay and Verlander stays in Houston, they're calling Cleveland about Shane Bieber. They're figuring out about, hey, I know you said Ohtani can't move, but what about ... They're not playing, and it doesn't guarantee you a win in a World Series. It doesn't guarantee you a win in a division, but I guarantee you that the Mets are going to sit there and outbid anyone they have to for whatever they have to. DeGrom may not come back, but it won't because the Mets won't offer him the most money. It may be even money. He gets matched, and he just don't want to be back in New York, and that's his choice. By the way, something similar that may happen to Aaron Judge going to San Francisco, perhaps, and not New York, if the Yankees and Giants are close. That's the crazy part. The Yankees usually, I remember back in the Teixeira thing many, many years ago, before he went to the Yankees, everybody in Baltimore was like, oh, my God, he's coming home. He's coming home. And if you give even money, it was $184 million, a lot of money. Orioles, they came to play. But it don't matter. If the Yankees come to play even, you got no chance. Well, how crazy is it that at even, I think Aaron Judge is going to leave? They're going to have to offer him the most money. And I think they will. So I think Judge will stay a Yankee, but I think they'll do that. But I think at even money, he'd go. At even money, DeGrom may go. Not an anti-Met. He just doesn't, he's not about that New York thing where he's eating that up. Starling Marte, I don't think he can get back out to the field in Queens fast enough. You know that. And all the best to him as he's recovering. Yeah, look, I that's just the way it is. But Edwin Diaz, when you got a dude who's eating up that spotlight, who's giving you what you want, who's giving you those moments, and who is locking down games for you, there is no price for that. You need that. And the way Buck manages, you need that. Had to happen. Had to happen. The fifth year may kill you. You may eat $20 million. Guess what? If you win a World Series in the first four, nobody gives a crap. It's the way it is. Nobody cares. That's why when the Angels, look, I'm not saying you should give Garrett Cole 9 years like the Yankees did, but the Angels, what, they're going to give 7 or 8, but they won't give 9? So you gave Anthony Rendon, who I love as a great player, but can't pitch, all the money instead? That's dumb. You know you're not getting it in years 7 and 8. As a closer for Diaz, the way he throws, you're not getting it year 5. He may not even pitch for you year 5. You may be eating the money year 5, and you don't care as long as you're eating the caviar and having the champagne dreams and all that nonsense after winning a World Series, one of the first 4. Had to happen, had to get done. Steve Cohen is not playing around. Again, this does not guarantee a division win, doesn't guarantee a World Series. But I'll tell you what I can guarantee you. Don't be surprised if they goes after Dansby Swanson. Don't be surprised if they goes after Carlos Correa. If Bogarts is available, if they go after, there shouldn't be anyone that surprises you. Then they may have to get creative and then overload in positions they're already strong and then trade guys out. Now, they were not willing to go do that, to go in and get, Wilson Contreras and David Robertson. But they may be willing to do that to go get Ohtani. They may be willing to do anything to go get Ohtani. They may be willing to do it to get Shane Bieber. They're not going to play. Not going to play. Not playing around, I'm telling you. Does not mean any guarantee of anything. And people are going to hate the Mets. As much as they were a nice story this year, because look, the same reason why I grew up with, and anytime I would tell somebody, hey, I'm a Met fan, all my family are Yankee fans, they love me, because nobody, the Yankees, unless you're a Yankee fan, it's oh, the Yankees are sickening. All they do is spend money. The Mets are about to be that team. The Mets are going to make the Yankees look slow in terms of the amount of money they're going to spend. They're not playing. And I think they will take a hard attempt at Nimmo. I don't know with Scott, and look, I understand how some people, I happen to like Scott. I have a great relationship with him over the years. He's not going to force Brandon to do what he doesn't want to do. He could have gotten Bryce. He knows this 40, 50 million a year. And Bryce wanted 13 years in the same spot. That's not something the agent's telling him to do. The agent's saying, go take the 150 for 3 years from San Francisco or LA and go back out to market, dude. Imagine right now he's back out there. How much money are you going to make? Right? So I don't know what that's going to be. Nimmo does seem like more so than DeGrom, a guy who so loves being in New York and being part of this team, that maybe he would take a little less if somebody outbid him in some team he doesn't want to go to. Maybe. But what if Seattle comes calling, right? And he ends up a chance to go for a team that's growing that way. It's got the All-Star game that's closer to home, gets to play in an outfield next to Julio Rodriguez and go play left field or something. I don't know. What if St. Louis comes calling? Who certainly could use them, and there are a bunch of them. For Nimmo, it's a big time want to, but you got the have to out of the way. The Mets can figure out whether it's Marte in center and go get a big bat in the outfield, or they go make a trade for an ace if DeGrom leaves, or a two-guy to go get him if Verlander or somebody else can't go. They go after some of the other guys. And look, these aren't guarantees, but they got what they need. They got money and they got prospects to do it. They got both in flux. The one thing you weren't finding in a trade, the one thing you weren't finding in the market was Diaz, and the Mets got him. First big one's out of the way. Again, reported 5 years, $102 million. Sugar, trumpets, queens, all back together again, coming up in 2023 and beyond. We'll be back with episode 123 very soon, much sooner than that. And as always, we thank you for being with us. Keep involved in the Unfiltered Revolution at Casey Stern, and always remember that we are thankful that we are presented by our good friends at BetOnline.